Welcome back to the Introduction to React series. Today we're going to talk about refs. Refs allow programmatic access to React elements. Almost all user interface interactivity can be accomplished with the concepts of state and props. Only a few exceptions cannot be implemented with these mechanisms, and refs are used exactly for those cases. Here's a typical use case for refs, setting focus programmatically. I will create a text input and a button. When I click the button, I want to focus this input. We first need to attach an event handler on click. In this handler, I need to use the focus method on the input element, and I can use a ref to get a reference to that element. I will first import the useRef hook and create a new ref variable called inputRef. The hook accepts a parameter which is the initial value of the ref. I will not set it for now. We will talk about its use later. I have to add a ref attribute to my element, which I have to set to my inputRef variable. Now this ref variable will hold the reference to my input element. Finally, I can write my code in the focus input handler. InputRef is a ref object. It has a current property. The current property holds the value of the ref variable, which in this case is the element. Therefore, I can just use the focus method on it. If I test my button now, you can see it focuses my input correctly. Besides focusing inputs, refs are also useful to control media playback or animations. If you want to integrate a non-React JavaScript library that attaches methods to DOM elements, you would have no other choice but to use refs to interact with these elements. It's important to know that these use cases are rare exceptions, and you should always rely on state and props for interactivity, instead of using refs to interact with the elements directly. Refs are used primarily to store references to elements, but that's not all they're capable of. A variable defined with the useRef hook has an initial value. It can be modified by updating its current property. It will persist its state between re-renders, and it's different from a state variable because it will not trigger re-renders when it's updated. Let's create this stopwatch example from the React documentation. I will need to set an interval and store the interval ID somewhere. If I store it in a normal variable, it will be reset to its initial value on each re-render, and it will not work as expected. Our ref is perfect for that, as it will persist the interval ID between re-renders, but it won't force the component to re-render when it changes. I will also need two state variables, the start time of the stopwatch and the current time. The start method will set the start time and current time to the current moment. Its core functionality will be to set an interval, which I am storing in the ref's current property, and that interval will update the current time state variable. This will happen every 10 milliseconds. The stop method will just clear this interval, again using the ref current property. I'll define a seconds past variable, which will just calculate the past seconds between the start time and the current time. I am using a regular JavaScript variable here, as we are only transforming values from two state variables. There is no need to use state variables or effects for such transformations. I'll render the seconds past variable. Now, if I press start, the stopwatch will start counting and stop will stop it. The stopwatch is only working because the ref is persisting the value between component re-renders. In this video, we discussed the most common use cases for refs, except one, interacting with uncontrolled inputs on forms. But we'll discuss that in the next video when we'll focus on forms. Stay tuned.